Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started. My name is Angie Pappas. I'm Director of Public Relations for Visit California, and we very much appreciate you joining us today. We are coming off the success of Visit California's first ever virtual Outlook Forum. I'm sure some of you or many of you joined us for that. And so coming off of that, we've developed Outlook Forum Plus, an ongoing webinar series. And today is our very first webinar of the free series that will offer insights into the travel landscape as we begin to understand the post-pandemic environment for California tourism. To stay in the know on upcoming webinar offerings or to ensure you're receiving all of Visit California's communications, you can go to industry.visitcalifornia.com/subscribe. And then you will be able to keep up with what we have coming up next. So looking ahead into the new normal, we're all in planning mode. I know you're all right there with us, and our team has been working to pinpoint how we're going to approach media relations in both the near term and the long term. And to guide our strategy, Visit California conducted a media survey back in February, which already feels like a long time ago. But we conducted that survey with help from our domestic PR agency, MMGY NJF. The survey generated more than 105 responses from travel and lifestyle media across the US and gave us a ton of insights to keep in mind as we forge ahead, and we're excited to share the results of that survey with you today. So the survey included questions related to travel intentions for 2021, media's interest in virtual versus in-person events and meetings, press trip requirements, emerging coverage trends, and more, both specific to California and more broadly, just about travel. Clearly, the landscape is evolving so quickly, and to add some more definition to that framework we developed with the survey results, we've kept the conversation going with media to determine how the day-to-day news of the pandemic's progress is changing their perspectives on travel. So today we'll share with you the survey's findings, and leading that discussion are Sara Gorgon and Odalys Flores, Visit California's team at MMGY NJF. Then we'll be joined by three top travel journalists representing AFAR, Lonely Planet, UPROXX, Matador, and Meetings Today, who will share more about what has changed and what remains since taking that survey just a few short weeks ago. So just a couple housekeeping things to ask our panel questions. Go ahead and type them into the Q&A box as the session progresses. We'll save all questions for the full panel until the end. And before I hand it over to the team, I will quickly plug a new resource hub for PR partners on Visit California's industry website, industry.visitcalifornia.com/PR. You can go there to check out more details about Outlook Forum Plus sessions with PR content, links to past issues of our PR Pulse report, and more ways to get involved with the program. So without further ado, please welcome Sara and Odalys from MMGY NJF.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Angie. I will now go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so as Angie mentioned, we are here to walk you through our survey results. Last month, we went out to over 100 journalists in a blend of freelance and lifestyle travel media. And we were very pleased with the results as we received 105 total responses from media. And all of them were domestic media, about half were based in state. And out of the 105, 2/3 were freelance and a third were some on-staff travel writers. So we have a good mix of feedback across the industry to share with you today. So our first question to media: how are you feeling about domestic travel right now? And so 51% of the respondents said they're only comfortable traveling via car right now, but will stay at a hotel overnight. 29% said yes, sign me up, I'll fly anywhere. And we had 15% said, no, I'm not currently traveling anywhere. And then 5% said that they are only comfortable doing regional trips via car. And then our second question what is your current sentiment about covering domestic travel? 50% of the respondents said, I am still taking a cautious approach to covering travel. 44% of that group said they're still covering all things travel related. And 6% said, I am not actively covering travel right now, with a fill in the blank. And so that fill in the blank was predominantly answers around widespread vaccination and or until their readers felt safe traveling again. And then our next question, if you are interested in press trips in 2021, which modifications would be important to you? And so for this one, they could mark all that applied. And so the majority of people, with 80 people selecting that they would only go on an individual press trip or individual itinerary, followed by primarily outdoor experiences that they'd be interested in. And then 45 people said that they are not up to carpool or do any kind of ride sharing at the moment. And then we had 3 people say that they are not taking any press trips in 2021. And then there was another category. We had 24 people select other. And so they were given the option to give additional details. And so the majority of the people that picked other said that they were seeking to be vaccinated first before they felt comfortable taking a press trip. And then there was a handful of people out of the 24 that said that they would feel comfortable joining a small group press trip, only knowing that everyone in that press trip had been vaccinated already. So the next question, in 2021, will you continue to rely on virtual events, meetings, and or desk side? So for this one, we found out 47% said that they felt comfortable with a blend of in-person and virtual, while 31% said yes, virtual will continue to be my preference, and 22% said no, I'm all done with virtual. Zoom fatigue has kicked in. And then moving on, has the past year caused a shift in your mindset regarding the need for in-person meeting and events? And so this is a word cloud of some of the important themes that continue to come up through everyone's answer. It was also an open-ended question, so people were able to provide a little bit more detail and feedback. And so a few, basically, the predominant answer is that they are still open to attending virtual press conferences, but that they work more so for desk sides and informational meetings, and not so much to experience a destination firsthand. Virtual will never replace that experience of being in destination. And so there's a few others that said that Zoom doesn't really work for for conferences, but works great again for informational desk sides. And then, someone else said, I just attended a virtual conference, and while it was great, given the circumstances, it was no replacement for meeting in person. And here on the next slide, you see what Nina, Ashley from AFAR, and Mary from Los Angeles Times, some of their direct quotes for this portion of the survey. And it echoes the same thing that, you can't replace, virtual will never replace an in-person experience. And then following the next question, so what conditions will make you feel more comfortable to attend an event in person? And so for this one, the popular answer included mask wearing, limited number of attendees, out and outdoor setting, and remaining socially distant. And we did receive 9 who said that they did not feel comfortable attending any kind of in-person media event this year. And then we also had another group of 14 people say selected other. And again, we're given the option to do a write-in answer. And so from this group, again, vaccination was key. So they wouldn't feel comfortable unless there was widespread vaccination or they had received a vaccine themselves. And then in the next question, in 2020, many publications focus primarily on regional or domestic travel. Once vaccines are rolled out throughout 2021, what will be your focus? So the majority said that they'll do a blend of domestic and international focus related coverage, while 28% said that they will primarily be focused on domestic travel coverage. And then we did get 12% that said primarily encouraging travelers to do regional trips. So following question, aside from COVID-19, what travel story topics are focused in 2021? So we had them again select all that applied. And as you can see, the popular choices were outdoors, road trips, sustainability, and the environment, as well as some of the other categories. The budget option came in as the least popular. And then we also had the other, and they had the option to fill in. And so some of those other popular topics included culinary, culture, national parks, sports and outdoor adventure, and other travel adjacent categories like wellness continue to come up amongst the 24 people that selected the other category. And then, so following question, how do you feel the pandemic has changed your editorial coverage of the travel industry moving forward? And this one was an open-ended question. And so a lot of the trending responses was around people discovering that travel is a privilege, not a right. And people are going to be more interested in meaningful travel, and sustainability will continue to come to the forefront. Another trending response was around safety and just safety protocol as people feel more comfortable and start getting out and exploring and traveling. And then we'll see here are two direct quotes from Megan and Erica of what they did as their write-in option for this. So as you'll see, they still, safety, national parks, outdoors will continue to be a focus. So when asked which changes in the way you cover travel do you expect to last after the pandemic? So for this one, deeper dives. So, the prediction is that people will, instead of taking many trips throughout the year, they'll be more selective. Both journalists and consumers will take fewer trips, but will focus on becoming more immersed in the destinations and taking in those cultures and really diving into the destinations that they decide to visit. And here there's a quote from Michelle, which she'll be speaking and expanding upon a little bit later in our panel portion of the webinar. And then we have BuzzFeed, Anna Maria, give a little bit more insight. And so, for example, BuzzFeed has been covering a lot more domestic now, which wasn't the norm before the pandemic. And some current stories that they've done, like a current headline is, will reveal which country you should visit one day, but you should plan a US road trip first. So it's doing a combination of having a focus on domestic, but still touching on international places that are aspirational at the moment, for BuzzFeed at least. And then when asked what travel trends do you foresee being big in 2021? So here's a word cloud again of some of the popular topics that continue to come up. A big takeaway from this question specifically are that there are some trends that are going to stay that we learned about through the pandemic, and those include road trips, outdoors, vacation rentals, RVing, and private accommodations. And then some additional emerging trends that people foresee and we should keep an eye out include reconnecting with families, bucket list trips to make up for lost time, wellness and detox vacations, as well as this term called vaxications, and then redo or makeup travel and sustainable travel are the ones that we should continue to keep an eye on as the rest of 2021 continues to go on. And then here two, again, two quotes for you to just take a look at. It was an open-ended question from Lori and Jeremy, and it echoes what we covered in the previous slide of what people envision coverage travel will be covering and will look like for the next coming months. And then this question was specifically for in staff. And so we asked them, is your publication working with freelancers in 2021? And so 60% said, yes, we're still working with freelance journalists. And 40% of the on-staff writers said, no, we're primarily keeping our stories in-house. And so that was telling. I know a lot of freelancers had a difficult time during the pandemic and figuring how to work with editors. And, there was a lot of cuts. So it's interesting to see where people are at, and this is going to be evolving as 2021 continues to unfold. And so now I will kick it off to Sara, who will finish walking us through.
Thanks, Odalys. So we wanted to put this to light, all of our findings, and kind of look across what we're actually seeing, marrying the answers from some of the publications we all work with daily, as well as to the survey results. Here you'll see that Condé Nast Traveler, they are continuing to put an emphasis on sustainable travel and community-driven stories. This means going deeper dives, just like Odalys said a few slides back. They want to go, what does the local community, who's the characters, what's the culinary, what's the art, the history, and more. A recent headline taken from the Condé Nast Traveler website was Slow Food and Slow Travel in Piedmont, Italy. And it was a story about really getting into what makes that destination special and is unique there. And another one a little closer to home is Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward packs a cultural and culinary punch. So really highlighting that community-driven deeper dive. Aside from COVID-19, they also said that their popular topics are going to be ones that Odalys already went over, including DEI, sustainability, bucket list, outdoors, family, road trips, and of course, luxury. Looking at travel and leisure, they had told us they want to remain a little nimble and a little more fluid. They know readers and the writers want to get back out and travel, but we're still in this bit of state of flux, especially over, you look at the country as a whole, and different states have different restrictions and levels of being open. So their coverage will remain flexible. Example, some of the things that they're looking at besides as they pivot is, there's going to still be some virtual coverage for those that are not quite ready to tiptoe out there. And one example is the headline that said, see the stunning photos from this year's firefall at Yosemite National Park. So kind of still giving that aspirational armchair travel. Whereas some of their other coverage is first person coverage, where the writers are going back out into the destination. They're showing what it's like to travel right now. An example of that is a recent story that was what I learned from my first family RV road trip. And again, it was a look at, what's happening out there in the world of travel, what's the restrictions, how do I do this? And then tapping also into that trend of RV travel and road tripping. Looking at AFAR, which we're very appreciative and lucky to have Michelle join us later, and she can expand further. But their audience is seeking those deep experiences and what it means to travel throughout the pandemic, whether it's in private jets or not, staying in exclusive accommodations. They're going to continue to bring the news of these to the audiences that keeps an eye on looking at health and safety. And again, those trends of road trips, private jets, safe reunions for those missed moments. Health and wellness will continue to play in, nature. And then, as we all are looking forward to the slow return of air travel to, will mostly bring us around the state of California, but maybe otherwise. And then wrapping up our consumer travel media section, just those major takeaways is that, we saw that not a lot of media are traveling far from their residence right now. Again, this survey was taken back in February, and so we can ask our three panelists a little later, maybe personally, if that's changing for them with some of the restrictions lessening over the last 2 weeks. I know even as recent as this weekend, movie theaters started to open with some capacity as well as indoor dining. So there's opportunities to talk to them about what that might now begin to look like. Some of the COVID trends that are here to stay, the outdoor travel, road trips, which bodes well for our California destinations and those private experiences. And then some of the major topics to continue looking out for. Many of them started pre-pandemic and will rightfully continue on post-pandemic. Those include sustainability, responsible tourism, family travel, and then a little more related to what took place this last year, though, is making up for lost time. And then as we look to plan our calendars and how we work with our media friends and our media relation events that we have, the blended approach is going to be key. Zoom fatigue is real. We all have back-to-back meetings. They have done a great job at letting us stay connected, and it works well for those information pieces, but in-person experiences are key to getting a true sense of a destination, and they have been missed. And now we'll take a look at our meetings, our MICE side of our media business. I know a lot of the destinations joining us today that this is a really important topic with them. So filling in our survey, we had 11 media participate, and more than 80% of them were on staff. And again, we'll talk to Tyler Davidson of meetings today in just a little bit. But going into our first question on the meeting side is we wanted to know what the current sentiment is about covering meetings and events. And here you're going to see an overwhelming majority, 91%, are currently and have been covering all things meeting. They haven't stopped. In fact, just looking at a few current headlines as how they're now covering that is the latest on bringing meetings to Hawaii Islands. So it's kind of the how are meetings taking place? What's next? When are those meetings going to happen? And another one is Nevada announces a tiered reopening timeline. Again, it's looking forward so that meeting planners can start to prepare. The next slide here is that how interested are you covering virtual meetings and conferences? Very similar to what we saw across the consumer media landscape is that a majority, 73%, understand that this will probably be a continued trend, this blend of in-person and virtual meetings and conferences. We do have 18% saying that virtual is here to stay in some way. It will probably remain even longer than when this pandemic wraps up, and we'll look at why that may be in just a bit. And then we have 9% saying that they're not interested, it's run its course, and certainly we can many times understand that sentiment as that Zoom fatigue is real. Moving on to the next one, we wanted to know, are you still interested in attending? So it might be here to stay, but will you go and attend so that we can stay connected? And again, another overwhelming majority of 91% said that they're comfortable and will attend a blend of in-person and virtual events. And a small percent says they have Zoom fatigue and they're not at all interested. And next one. So in the past year, there's been a shift in mindset as it relates to the need for in-person meetings and events. Again, just like we saw in the consumer, it's good for getting the information, the nuts and bolts, but you can't get the feeling of it. You can't get the networking. You can't make the relationships happen digitally. You just can't. And some of the sectors that we thought that, and reasons that you need those in person is that you just can't you can't do the relationship building, the meetings and the networking that you do. It's beyond the presentations that you see in many of these meetings and events. Moving on to the next one. Here, Tyler kindly filled us in why he thought networking was why in-person events are so crucial. That includes networking and the ability to interact with people. The breakouts don't do it. It's kept us going for a year, but we're all ready to kind of tiptoe back into that and really dedicate to meeting on site. And then JT here also shows that there's some developments she wants to see remain past, that there's pent-up demand, and that there is this thought that people will become more selective as to what they actually dedicate their time and energy in attending. But there is also some good around the corner as to this might open up meetings and events for greater number of audiences. And then moving into the next slide, Barbara with Convene says that she wants to see additional trends come out of what's been taking place, this awareness of how meetings affect climate change and environment with food waste, and the spirit of innovation that has really come out of the pandemic. The next one, please. And aside from COVID, just like we asked our consumer travel friends, what trends are going to be happening in addition or outside of just the COVID-19 landscape? And these trends include event design, DEI, sustainability, the rise of small companies, some strides in technology. Just a few headlines I've seen was that how to use technology to make in-person events more engaging. So using that technology both in person and virtually. Obviously, DEI was a huge topic this past year and will continue onward. And we also saw sustainability pre-pandemic, and we will most likely continue to see it afterwards. And the next one, please. And so just a few of the major takeaways. That again, despite the meetings and events being on pause for so long, there is pent-up demand, and they will continue to cover, the media in that space will continue to cover in whichever way, both blended and in person, though we're all really excited to get back to in person, the major trends that we already have discussed. And then very similar to what we saw in the consumer travel landscape is our meetings media friends, they're going to be covering the information out there, both in a hybrid manner, both in person and virtual. So continue to meet with them in ways that you have been the past year, but they're also looking to get back out and discover those destinations that are hosting meetings. And that concludes our portion of the webinar presentation. And now I would like to invite our media panelists to turn on their cameras and join me. And I want to say welcome to Michelle Baran from AFAR, Wunderman, freelance, award-winning freelance journalist. I've seen her work on MSN, Voters, Forbes, UPROXX, Matador Network, Lonely Planet. I'm sure I'm missing a few there, Allie, but you can tell us later. And then of course we have Tyler Davidson joining us from Meetings Today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I know many of our attendees here today can't wait to have you back out in the destination. So how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Shall we jump in?
Sure.
Perfect. So this first question is for all of you guys. So you all had a bit of a differing opinions on the virtual versus in-person desk side meetings and events. How can destinations appeal to both of those options and groups, and who have Zoom fatigue and those who want to remain virtual? I don't know if
I can jump in. I mean, first of all, there's no question, and during this pandemic that is like offensive or overstepping. I think they're during the height of the pandemic or throughout the pandemic, there was always like a little bit of an apologies, and there's no need for an apology. Like, we're all navigating this together. I always appreciate if you're interested in person and you want to ask, like, fine, I can always say I'm not comfortable, and to have a virtual option is great too. Like, just give us the choice to do either one if that's what you're up for, approaching me. So I kind of feel like, because like you've said, the answer last week might be different from the answer this week. So definitely these things are not set in stone right now.
Perfect.
And yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I found the desk side updates very helpful. California is really kind of led, the country in a way and not opening up so far. So I think from my experience, we're kind of scrambling to find interesting angles to cover in our story. A lot of them, they're just dark right now. But during that time, I think there's really good human interest stories of people in those destinations helping out, say, hospitality workers that have been furloughed or laid off, or local people who are in need of, say, food or services. So I think, especially in California right now, as we're kind of getting ready, I think, to open up, and I'm seeing a lot more activity. It seems like people everything's sort of waking up now. But I think those human interest stories and how people are kind of pitching in to make a difference are appealing to us right now.
I agree. Allie?
Yeah, so I live in Montana, so desk side is more often than not an opportunity for me. So I would say the biggest, most important thing that I've experienced over the last year in terms of giving an option is give it the option of a phone call. We have Zoom fatigue, and sometimes there's been this assumption that if we're going to have a meeting, it's going to be a video meeting. Give me an option for a phone call, and I'm probably more likely to take it. I actually like doing Zoom calls as well. It's nice to see people, but that phone call can be just as effective, and I've been taking a lot of them. Or come up to Montana. That's always nice too. But while that can't happen, a phone call is just as effective as a Zoom call, in my opinion.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Allie, since you were just up. So in response to the question about the past year has caused a shift in mindset, you responded that you won't be taking quickie trips, perhaps from Montana, and are looking to spend more time in a destination. Can you elaborate?
Shockingly, it's actually very easy to get in and out of Montana. I live next to Glacier National Park, and it's easier. I'm from San Francisco, so it's easier to go from Glacier than from SFO, if you can believe it, because there's only 3 gates and nobody's there. But the way that I was traveling before the pandemic was different country, different state every week, pretty much. I was in and out, in and out. And that wasn't sustainable before the pandemic. And now even more so, I'm recognizing that it's not sustainable for the planet and it's not sustainable for the destinations I visit. So I'm really interested in spending much longer periods of time in places to justify the environmental impact of getting on a plane, as well as doing as much as I can to really understand a destination, because living in a tourist destination myself, and I work quite a bit with the country of Belize, which is heavily dependent on tourism. It's a tourism-based economy. We really need to figure out how to help, as writers, help these destinations be more resilient to changes like this. And I feel like as a writer, if I'm able to actually get to know the people that are affected by the presence of tourism, then I can write stories that are more helpful for them. And again, have a better impact on the environment if I'm going to be choosing to get on a plane at all. So no more of that once a week stuff. I think I'm done with that.
Yeah. Michelle, Tyler, I saw you shaking your head to that one.
Oh, just the like, yeah, the hamster wheel travel. I mean, I think this year has definitely taught us all to slow down and showed us the real benefits of that, of just being able to take in your surroundings and do those deeper dives and the just beautiful things. It's more relaxing. The stories are better. So yeah, I totally agree. I think everyone is, and for better or for worse, because obviously in theory you can do more if you're doing more trips a year, but I think we're actually going to be doing the destinations a huge favor by doing fewer but better, deeper dives.
Yeah, I would say at first it was kind of nice not being in a hotel and a plane a few times a month, it seems like. But I think I'm sort of itching to get back out there and, and just keep up my relationships with all the great people that, at the different destinations and the hotels that we cover. And then like I said in the survey, it's all about networking and getting face to face with people and seeing things with your own eyes. And it's hard to kind of beat that in person. So I'm looking forward to getting that back out there again.
Thank you. Well, the next question is actually for you, Tyler. So you're based here, I know actually for a short period of time left, but what are you anticipating next for meetings and events in California? Seems it's wide, or soon to be hopefully wide open. That time
I mean, I see just in general activity picking up. It's been a tough year, I think, for everyone. And you're kind of looking for those unique angles. And now I'm starting to see more PR stuff going out and more pitches. and destinations gearing up to offer specials, maybe to lure meeting planners in. So, and as I said before, though, California is lagging still. I'm hoping when they relax some of the restrictions that it'll just fire up really quick. So I'm sort of expecting that, and as people get vaccinated, I think that's going to be huge. And I really think it's just about people's comfortableness traveling, getting the message out to the attendees that destinations and facilities are taking all the precautions they can to make sure the attendees are safe. And I know we've done actually at Meetings Today, a couple of Meetings Today live events, one in Orlando, and then we just did one in the Big Island of Hawaii. And it's just, in Hawaii, everyone had to get get tested multiple times before they went, tested on site. We had a medical concierge there. And then we also really just wanted, in how we cover it, really just portray all of the safety measures and protocols that we're taking. So that is huge. People need to feel safe that they can go out and travel again.
Great. So it sounds like safety and the vaccinations and how to is some of those trends that you might be getting from those PR pitches you just mentioned.
Yeah, outdoor venues are big right now. So, we've written many different stories about outdoor venues and the different destinations. I just filed one on New Orleans, for example, which is, they're all about huge in-person meetings. So they've really transitioned to promote their outdoor facilities, as are, number of places in California. So I think that and drive market meetings are going to be the first to come back. And I'm sort of trying to run down whether training meetings might be big too, because everyone's kind of been working out of their home for a year. So I think a lot of organizations are going to want to get their team together, and even if they're training new people that are maybe coming back into the job as the economy improves.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, Allie, Michelle, kind of flipping back over to the consumer side. You both responded that you're looking to cover a blend of international and domestic stories this year. Allie, have you had conversations with editors you work with about the types of stories they're assigning? And Michelle, as an editor, are there any big focuses you're looking for in domestic stories this year?
Yeah, I've been checking in with editors. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, it's been a tough year for freelancers as a lot of stories have moved in-house. So I'm checking in just to see if they're even hiring. But there is definitely a big emphasis on travel trends. So, I'll get a million emails a day about hotels making this change for COVID, and they constitute a trend. So those trends are great. I've been writing a lot about how COVID affects things. My niche is on wildlife and the environment and the outdoors already. And so there is a lot of interest in that space. And the relationship with COVID is definitely of interest to readers. But then typical destination coverage. I think travel writing at its core is about inspiration. So travel essay can be really helpful for people who are stuck inside and want to travel just by reading, or have somewhere to plan to go to 4 or 5 years from now. That's been the case in the past too. People don't necessarily read an article and go the next day. So we're still looking at for years down the road what that could look like. But personally, I'm looking to capitalize on what people have been experiencing through COVID and how to get them back out to travel. Like, I really want to write about everyone has started birding, and I'm a really big birder. And so how can you take those backyard birding skills on the road? Where can you go in the country or even out of the country to put those new skills to use? And so I'm trying to work with editors to figure out exactly where that intersection can happen, because I think there's actually a lot of great storytelling there.
And yeah, so you wanted me to speak more to domestic? Or
preferably just given our audience here today, but of course we saw on that slide that it's about a 40-60 split of looking to cover domestic and international. Is there anything you wanted to add to that as to what you're looking specifically?
Yeah, so we never want to stop covering international, even when it was challenging, as Allie hinted on, like people love the inspiration, and also they're missing destinations throughout the world so much. So even just giving, spotlighting places and those human interest stories so people can travel there, through our writing. And also I'm excited to say that AFAR is starting to use freelancers again, I think, and that just goes to show how things are changing from one month to the next, as the situation starts to improve. But along those lines, like with international, for example, we are going to be looking also to incorporate more local coverage, and that also plays into our desire to have a more diverse writer base. So looking at local experts to help fill in on international destinations. And on the domestic front, I mean, one thing that's been pretty just interesting about this pandemic is we're all going through it together. And so everything we're feeling as editors, as writers, our readers are feeling it too. So in some ways, the stories are very natural. It's what are we doing? What are we comfortable with? What do we want to do? So the road trips that we want to take, the family reunions we're planning, it's so different than before the pandemic, because everything we feel about upcoming travel is so reflective of what our readers feel and want to. And we focus on this kind of empathy-led writing, where we're just trying to be very real and honest about our own excitement and fears and all of it. And it is really organic in a way. So as far as domestic travel, like, we're also tiptoeing out of our homes now, and we're also starting to plan those upcoming trips. We're all excited to get vaccinated and get back on planes, just like some of our readers. So those are the stories, so domestically, in California, we're based, half of our office is based in California. So it's always going to be a really important destination for AFAR. It's just an important destination in the US in general. And so it's been a great time to focus on, to again, do those deeper dives, to find the hidden gems in California. What a great time to tell our readers about places that we ourselves are discovering during this pandemic that we didn't know existed, whether it's great, under the radar state parks, or we're also just kind of, I don't know, we're all like, we're kind of in this way while we're stuck, we're also finding new places that we ourselves didn't know about. So that's been really fun to both experience and then share with our readers.
I mean, how fortunate are we that California has such a diversity of experiences just in our backyard. It's really,
there are worse places to be stuck, so to speak,
and to cover. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my last question before we open it up to the audience, because I know that they're probably excited to talk to you as well, and it kind of touches on the couple of things you guys already said, is just that responsible travel, sustainability, obviously some hallmarks of California and travel as it is, are topics that you're going to be covering a little bit more in depth this year, and as did many other of the survey respondents. So as responsible tourism is a major focus for us at Visit California, as well as many of our partners, can you expand why you feel this topic is coming to the forefront even more so in 2021? And have you seen any good examples of destinations doing it well?
I can start off. I mean, the pandemic, it drove home the responsibility we bear, and we really took that to heart at AFAR. I mean, it's a deadly pandemic, and the things that we write drive decisions. And so we really felt that everything we wrote during this time, we had to do so responsibly. You carry the weight of that with you, and that weight is going to continue, long past this pandemic. And so it wasn't okay to just, write a story and not think of the implications and not think of the way you were communicating it. And so I don't know how you couldn't think more about responsibility during this time. You naturally had that weight with you. And so, and I have to give credit too to what a difficult time. You want to promote travel, you want to promote coming to the destination, but you also don't want people to put themselves and others in danger. So I have to give credit too to PR, all the different PR entities out there, and all of us trying to juggle that messaging. And I think we all just did the best we could with that, and tried to just always return to that responsible tone. and giving people the information they needed so that they could travel responsibly. And what else can you do during a time like this?
Yeah, I think when this started, initially we cover meetings and conventions, and we were, they booked 3, 6 months, years out. So initially, like, we were, how are we going to cover this? And kind of the initial thought is, well, they're booking so far out, this is probably going to last 3 months, and then we'll kind of be back to normal. So, we can kind of cover it like we always have. And then then it's like, it just didn't go away. And so then it just became 24/7 COVID coverage. And there's a lot of debate in our industry between meeting planners, and you can see them discussing and sort of arguing about, is it safe to have any sort of meeting at all? I think the jury is out on that. But I mean, it's all about, like I said before, all about protocols, safety, communicating to attendees. I've been to a couple meetings of maybe, well, one was about 800 people, and one was, that was MPI, WEC, and they did a great job with that. Social distancing signs everywhere in the hotels, daily tests, thermometer tests. And then I went to one in Dallas for Associated Luxury Hotels International. Same deal, and social distanced in breakout rooms, et cetera. And it's sort of throwing the whole ratio off too, about, the kind of, when you, how many hotel rooms you're booking versus the meeting space you're going to get. So everyone's kind of still figuring that out. And I hope next year, if we have this similar sort of presentation, we'll all just sort of look back on it and say, well, let's not do that again, and things are back to normal.
Agreed. Anything you wanted to add to that, Allie?
Yeah, I was hoping to. So I think that responsible and sustainable tourism it's something I was covering before, and something I think about a lot. And especially now, like Michelle said, we're so much more aware of the impact that we have on each other as individuals. And hopefully we have more empathy than before the pandemic started. And I think that, again, that applies to tourism as well. So this is actually a really incredible opportunity for California as a state, as a destination, as a series of destinations to lead the way on what the future of tourism can look like. Because as I mentioned before, you have people birding for the first time, you have them taking an RV, camping, they're going into nature for the first time, and they haven't been brought up with the rules of leave no trace. They don't know about not touching wildlife. They don't know about all these things that could intrinsically damage places forever. And while outdoor adventure tourism is on the rise, California has this amazing chance to show the way on how tourists can be more conscious as they enter these spaces and share them with people, plants, and animals. And so I think that when we're talking about responsible tourism, it's absolutely to each other, but it's to the planet as well. And I think that all of that goes together. You can't really have one without the other. So I'm really hoping that there's an opportunity to cover these sorts of stories more and to write about how California leads the way on these issues. Because if we all rush into the wilderness as one and trample everything, then we'll have learned nothing about the fragility of our ecosystem.
I agree. Love that. Thank you. So, Michelle, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one last little note on that is also just during this pandemic, I think we also realized how important the way we represent ourselves as travelers is. Before it was like, I do what I want, I go where I want, I write about it. Like, I carry the weight of the stories I report on in person so much more now. I want to make sure that the readers know that if I go anywhere, I'm taking all the precautions, I'm wearing my mask, and I am so conscious of the way that I am moving through the world and what that portrays to my reader, and the respect to the people who can't do it or who won't do it. And that is so different, carrying that weight with you. It's so, again, when people are pitching stories, I think they also have to understand we can't just go anywhere, anytime, and do anything. We have to be cognizant of the rules and regulations, the, you know, the safety and the health and safety environment. So that part of it is different, that we bear a certain responsibility with us now, wherever we go.
Agreed. Well, I have a few audience questions, if you don't mind. Tyler, there is one for you that's kind of a follow-up. So California has lagged the rest of the nation in having meetings. Do you think that the perception will linger even when we reopen?
I think there's going to be a lot of pent up demand and desire to have meetings. So there's going to be a lot of compression, first of all. People have postponed their meetings. So all of those are going to start piling up. I think, you know, people want to get out and see each other. They want to get out of their house and their Zoom meetings. And, you know, there's so many great destinations in California that are really just top tier A-list destinations that I will think it'll be very in demand. And I also think places like Las Vegas will be too, because people want to go and get, you know, they've been cooped up. They want to go out and, you know, and have some fun and see some stuff and just get back to kind of normal again. So, you know, I think a destination like California with all it offers and its incredible diversity, you know, wine country, big cities, you know, it's going to be, I think, very much in demand. I think probably more than kind of lower tier destinations once everything opens up.
I know a bunch of our attendees are breathing a little sigh of relief with that. So kind of going back, we were talking about some outdoor travel. With such a focus on outdoor travel this year, how do you think you'll cover, if you will cover them, more populated destinations like LA and San Francisco? Or do you think that the focus will remain on smaller and rural destinations?
I think that LA and San Francisco, being a San Franciscan myself, grew up in Marin and San Francisco, either side of the bridge. There's a lot of outdoor destinations in both places. I think, you know, you can't discount the Presidio as an incredible spot to go to in San Francisco. Fort Funston, I mean, the list is endless. There's a lot of greenery. So I think my stories will focus on where you can find those bits of green that maybe people wouldn't have considered even looking at before. And I'd love to see what Los Angeles has to offer, or other bigger cities in California, since I know San Francisco a little bit better. But I think that it's like what Michelle was talking about earlier, about discovering the places that have been right under our noses this entire time and breathing some life into them that is compatible with the safety regulations and protocols people would like to adhere to as they begin to venture out. I think it's a really cool chance to shine some light on some cool stuff.
Agreed.
And one interesting thing about cities too is that we've been staying away from cities for this whole year. So actually, I think there's going to be a great curiosity in rediscovering them. Like, we've missed the cities, you know, so we've been doing the outdoors. And I think that will continue to be, we've realized how great that is. I think that we're all so curious to, you know, and wanting to get back to the cities that we've missed too. So I think actually, as we come out of this pandemic, the cities that kind of became like, oh no, too crowded, too many people, stay away. I think there will be a great rediscovery of cities, and also just wanting to give them some love and support because they got hit so hard during this time.
Yeah, and I think people want to go out to restaurants. They want to see live music. So yeah, so I think like Michelle said, I think the cities especially are probably well positioned because people, once it's safe and you can gather together, I think people will do just that.
Agreed. So are you seeing any trends in terms of senior travel? Seniors are near the front of the line for vaccines. Should we be marketing the destination specifically to them? And I've personally seen a few pieces on that and talking to my own parents, how that has trending. So,
I mean, anecdotally, I know my parents are vaccinated and they are planning a trip to Costa Rica. And after a year of telling them not to go anywhere, I am not going to tell them otherwise. So I think that it's only natural that the data and the anecdotes support that. But I think the good news is that the rest of us aren't too far behind either. So
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Market to seniors. Why not? I think you have people who are, all of us are really recognizing the preciousness of life, and you gotta live in the moment and YOLO, as they say. So they're getting out there, and why not show them where the accessible, comfortable, fun, awesome places are? Yeah.
Agreed. A bit of a technical question. So for pitching purposes, can you share an update on your current media lead times? Are you working shorter windows, or given that it's a little bit harder to foresee what might be taking place, but
we are much shorter windows. It's just you don't know how big the issues are going to be. It's just fluid, and then all of a sudden things start opening up, or they'll go into a different tier. And then so more people might get their marketing message out there. So, we're in touch with all the production people and sales people constantly. Just, how big is the next issue going to be? How many, are we going to get support for this section or that section? So and then just covering the news coming out of everything. Things just change on a dime. They turn on a dime now. So much shorter lead times. But then again, we have the standard things we do on a yearly basis that, say in a July issue or an August issue, that we'll still be working ahead of on that stuff.
Yeah. Allie, are you seeing any differences when you're pitching your editors, or Michelle, what you're planning for the next foreseeable future?
In terms of working with PR, I need a little bit of a longer lead time on those national day of whatever. Getting a pitch the day before isn't going to work as a freelancer, but it's been more or less the same since before the pandemic. Actually, I'm still pitching and hearing back from editors who are commissioning freelancers in much the same time as before. That said, to the point that I mentioned earlier, because trend coverage is so important, sometimes if I'm sent a pitch from a PR person, if it's just a standalone thing happening, I might need to wait some time until I have confirmation that it's part of a trend. But it's not all that different than before, for me personally.
Yeah, I would say it's a mix. Like, obviously, I mean, I'm the news editor, so I work on sometimes stories within an hour, but our bigger features, the one thing I will say that changed this year from last is last year there was a year of ripping everything up and starting over a million times, the year of the pivot. I would say that we've, recalibrated everything. We know, so we're those longer lead time stories that like last year, because we had to go, we entered the pandemic during the year and everything had to change. This year, we have the advantage of starting the year still in the pandemic, so able to forecast through the year, knowing, having a better grasp on the types of stories that we can run, those bigger, like beautiful features, without having to completely start over and reimagine them. So I feel like our longer view of the year is better and more stabilized than last year. So it's a mix depending on the story, but certainly if it's a feature story, something that's going to require a little more work, longer lead time is always a little bit better. But yeah, I also, if you got a news story, send it to me now. Might go live today.
Got it. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your guys' time today, for both participating in the survey back in February, giving us additional insight today. For those in the audience that might have additional questions, feel free to send it to the Visit California team, and we'd be happy to continue facilitating your burning questions. And anything else you guys want to add as we wrap up?
Wear your mask.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah.
Stay
safe out there.
Exactly.
Same. Thank you, and be well. We really appreciate.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.